Welcome, everyone, to the Body Electric 2.0. I'm thrilled and honored to have Dr. Luis Garcia on today. He was on the original Body Electric. I learned so much about biomagnetism from him, and we're going to go a little bit deeper today. And we're going to be talking about biomagnetism, where quantum biology meets energy medicine. Welcome, Dr. Garcia.
Thank you very much, Christine. Great to be back.
Oh, it's really an honor, and I know that since since I did the last interview, you've learned so much and continue to learn so much about the current threats that we're all up against, especially as we record this in 2020. And so it's just always very empowering to have such just more tools in our toolkit. So I'm really excited to expand everyone's knowledge who might be listening around biomagnetism. And how can we really tie biomagnetism into this conversation around energy, frequency, and vibrational healing? And in your opinion, is it sustainable?
Okay. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So if you recall, biomagnetism can be described as life, and magnetism, the energy, the magnetic energy surrounding life. And so here I have a magnet, and I'm going to place it on here. Even though we can't see the energy that these have, hold on, if I tilt this down, if I bring this magnet close to this one, we can see that it moves it. And so it will either push it away from, or if I flip this over, it can bring it towards the other one. Mm-hmm. So by using magnets, we can physically manipulate energy within our bodies. And so magnets move hydrogen protons around. Mm-hmm. And so hydrogen protons make up water. Water is H2O. Water can be broken down into separate hydrogen proton and a hydroxy ion OH. And so by using the different colors of the magnets on different areas of the body, you can shift the pH and stabilize it in different areas of the body. And so you are physically moving energy around. pH represents hydrogen potential, and it tells us if something is alkaline, acidic, or neutral. And so there's something called the Bohr effect that relates to pH and the hemoglobin's ability to hold on to the oxygen molecules. And so at a specific pH, the hemoglobin, which is inside of the red blood cells, will hold on to more oxygen and deliver it to the tissues. And the tissues that are more acidic, well, as the hemoglobin arrives, it's going to let go of that oxygen and it will be absorbed more. So in using the magnets, you can help the body recover and provide the energy that's necessary for it to start healing and regaining its homeostasis. Mm-hmm. And so the cells require a maintenance energy of roughly minus 20 millivolts in order to be able to function and survive. And when those millivolts are altered into the positive range, well, that's when disease occurs. That's when it stops functioning adequately. And so through using the magnets, you can maintain that negative energy potential, the voltage, and allow for the cells to continue in their natural energy states. And so electromagnetic energy, or these magnets, have frequencies, if you will, that they add to the body, just like our thoughts are frequencies. Mm-hmm. And so, for example, if I say I'm going to make a fist right now, I don't have to do it until it's my actual intention to do it. Mm-hmm. Until I send that mental frequency through my brain, through the brainstem, down the neurons, to the muscles, to the ligaments, to the nerves, to actually make a fist. Mm-hmm. I don't have to know the physiology, the anatomy involved. I just need the energy, the frequency of intention. And so it's literally as simple as a thought, yet as complex as, what does go on when you make a fist? How many physiological changes are taking place from the brain to, the fingers and the palm when you do that? Ultimately, it doesn't matter. It just takes the frequency of an intention, a vibrational thought that goes from the brain down to your hand. So biomagnetism incorporates all of this and more. And it's just amazing that we could go as deep down that rabbit hole as we want, or we can just kind of stay at the surface and accept that you're right. I don't know the physiology and anatomy involved in, closing my hand and making a fist. But when I want to do something, I just need to think about it and it happens. So we can do the same with our immune system, with our circulation, with our blood pressure, by controlling our emotions, our thoughts, as well as our food, because we are what we eat. Our food contains energy. The healthier, the more alkaline the food, the better, the more nutritional energy it's going to provide for our body. And in terms of, is biomagnetism sustainable? That's, I would say my favorite question of all, because it involves magnets, simple magnets, that these are actually made of neodymium. Magnets can be made of cobalt, they can be made of ferrite, they can be made of all different materials, but these in particular that we use and actually sell to the public are made of neodymium, and they last for over 100 years easily. They will hold on to that magnetic charge, that magnetic energy. And the trick is that they have to be above 1,000 surface Gauss in order to work. So just like when, if I want to make a fist, that thought has to meet a certain action potential threshold. If it's not strong enough, well, I'm not going to make a tight fist. If it's a weak thought, well, I'm not going to be able to close my hands. If I make it, if my thought is firm that I want a tight fist, well, the action potential reaches that threshold point and I can make a tight fist. So with the magnets, they have to be at least 1,000 Gauss at the surface in order to create the action potentials in our body so that we get the effect that we want using biomagnetism. And so once again, absolutely, biomagnetism is sustainable because you're using magnets that are going to last for over 100 years. And, a simple $20 pair of magnets can change people's lives in many ways by helping stabilize the pH of the body.
It's such an elegant system, and we've woven this conversation around pH throughout the conversations in the summit. And, pH, as you said, is a window into cell voltage, which is our, electrical nature. And so I think it's just it's just a beautiful tool that can treat so many things, and getting the body's ability, or, just getting in touch with giving the body energy so that the body can do the work. Right. And so,
Correct.
So I think it's just an amazing tool. And, you've gone through obviously this interconnection in biomagnetism with our electrical nature or energy body. But how about also, how does biomagnetism relate to what we would say quantum biology? And quantum biology is, this big term, and it has different terminologies like quantum tunneling and quantum coherence and quantum entanglement. And people might be like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start with all of this. But can you just share your insights around biomagnetism in relationship to quantum biology?
Absolutely. And so when I first heard the term quantum biology, it kind of struck a chord in me, and I said, let me look it up. And the more I looked it up, the more it was just fascinating, and the more it resonated with, biomagnetism as I practice it. And so I want to start by defining some terms. And let's say that quantum biology, whereas biology studies, say, the cells and the microbiology, things that we can kind of see underneath a microscope, quantum takes everything to the atomic and subatomic levels. And so we're no longer talking about anything visible or necessarily, palpable. We're talking more about theories and what if scenarios. And so fortunately today, there have been some studies that have been able to prove some of these concepts. But even though I'm making the relationship between biomagnetism and quantum biology, it may be many years in the future before, it's going to be able to be proven. But I would love to define certain concepts. So say in quantum tunneling, I'm going to read it for a second here so that my words aren't mixed. Quantum tunneling, it's where a particle such as an electron, a wave, has a certain probability of being able to pass through a solid wall to the other side, like throwing a ball through a wall. And so if you want to get it over the wall, you'd throw it over. But in quantum tunneling, if you throw the ball hard enough at the wall, it will actually go through the wall. And so quantum tunneling suggests that a particle can hit an impenetrable barrier and disappear from one side and reappear on the other side. And so examples, real life examples, are the sun, where today scientists accept that quantum tunneling occurs when two hydrogen atoms undergo nuclear fusion and create helium, and that creates the bursts of energy that we see from the sun. Another example are enzymes that use quantum tunneling, where enzymes transfer electrons and protons via quantum tunneling. So my theory is that biomagnetism also incorporates quantum tunneling through the muscle testing. And so in the prior example of what quantum physicists have already kind of stated, that if you throw a ball hard enough at the wall, it will actually penetrate and come out the other side. With biomagnetism, in the muscle testing, as I grab someone's legs, so these are the shoes, half shoes that I put on them, so that I can then observe when one of the legs contracts relative to the other leg. In quantum tunneling, my thought, my intention has to be strong enough to send an energy wave, a thought, from my body into the individual's body to that very precise location. So if I'm inquiring about their thyroid, I grab their legs and I send a vibrational, energetic ping, if you will, to the thyroid. As long as that intention has enough energy behind it, then the legs will respond either with a contraction or nothing at all. So if there is an energy imbalance, a pH imbalance at the thyroid, then I will observe some type of shift in the leg length. And so for me, the quantum tunneling is the energy of my intention going through the legs, up the abdomen, up the thorax, to the thyroid, and it's going through all of those different layers of tissues, arteries, veins, joints, spaces, bone. It doesn't matter how many barriers there are before that energy wave gets to the thyroid. The body will respond as long as my intention is strong enough, if you will. And so for me, that's a perfect example of quantum tunneling with biomagnetism.
Yeah, these are complex, concepts, and I think that's, a perfect illustration. And we see this every day, right? The work that you're doing with patients reinforces, the validity of these concepts in your practice.
Correct. And I know that you guys also practice muscle testing, and not sure if you've, ever thought about it in that way, but, our thoughts have to go through the body to certain regions, and it's directed thanks to our intention. It doesn't matter, how many tissues it has to go through. It will get there as long as our intention, is strong enough and focused enough.
Yeah.
The next concept I'd like to clarify and also compare with biomagnetism is what's called quantum coherence. And so in this, and a perfect example is photosynthesis, where sunlight is converted into biomass. And it's when objects behave like a wave, multitasking, as one photon may follow multiple pathways at the same time in order to complete its metabolic activity. So when a photon of light, say one photon of light, is captured by the chlorophyll molecule, it is then delivered to, its endpoint or reaction center below, but it doesn't just choose one route. It multitasks and divides and goes via multiple routes at the same time, instantly. And so the example of this in biomagnetism is that whether I'm doing the muscle testing, say once again to the thyroid, or I'm physically placing a magnet on the thyroid, it doesn't matter if I test at the arms and grab the patient's arms, or test at the legs, or test through using a surrogate. All of that energy moves instantly through multiple pathways, such that I can either use the pathways that have gone down to the legs and test at the level of the legs, or I can use the pathways that have gone to the arms and muscle test through the arms. Do you follow?
Yeah, there's multiple pathways, as you said, to get that information. Yeah.
Exactly. And so it's not that you can only test with one method because the pathway just took, the right, took the path that goes to the right, or it took the path that goes to the left. We can test using many different muscle testing techniques because ultimately the path is
it goes through multiple pathways, right?
It goes through multiple pathways. Exactly.
We have to create a new word, right?
And so the word is, quantum coherence. So that's another example of biomagnetism tying in with quantum biology. And then the last example would be quantum entanglement, which Einstein called spooky action at a distance. And so an example is in the European robin that navigates through sensing Earth's magnetic fields. Quantum entanglement is when two molecules are far apart, yet they remain in contact with one another. So inside the robin's retina, for example, there are what are called cryptochrome proteins that are sensitive to light, and they have these cryptochrome proteins have two electrons that are quantum entangled with one another. They're far enough apart, yet they kind of dance a delicate dance that is sensitive to the direction that the bird flies in Earth's magnetic field. So if it's going towards, say, North Pole or whatever, then one electron will move in one direction. If it's going south, then the electron will move in the other direction. So that is the current theory behind quantum entanglement and navigation through Earth's magnetic fields. That, once again, quantum entanglement states that two molecules can be far apart, yet they can be connected to one another. And so, in terms of biomagnetism, as well as energy medicine in general, how is it that you can have a surrogate person here with you that you're working with and have the actual patient be in another city, in another country, and you can work with their energy Well, they're quantum entangled in one country and you're in another country, yet you're working with their energy. They are physically somewhere else, but they're actually physically with you or with the surrogate that you're accessing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, at some point, I would love to experiment and prove these concepts more, but I find them fascinating.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's a great job, Dr. Garcia, explaining all of this. And a couple speakers have mentioned this idea of quantum entanglement, but didn't really define it. So I appreciate you defining it. But it's definitely, how we can work with things in different locations, but are still connected, right? And so this is a phenomenon we see, of course, but I think quantum entanglement has, and all these concepts through quantum biology really have the language to explain what we're seeing in practice. So,
Correct.
yeah. You use magnets, with patients, and you train practitioners how to use magnets as well. And so, you're working, with real life patients all the time on acute issues and chronic issues. And so, how can we use magnets to help with the illnesses that you see on a regular basis?
Sure. So, once again, whether they come to me for acute conditions or chronic, it really doesn't make that much of a difference. Ultimately, their body has been in chaos, energetic chaos, for whether a long time or a short time. And so, to explain a recent patient that came to me, an asthmatic patient that happened to have acquired a virus, a respiratory virus, and he had been feeling even more symptomatic since acquiring the virus. And so when I started muscle testing him, I realized that he had many underlying pH imbalances in his entire respiratory system. And so part of those had to do with his underlying base asthmatic issues. And then the other half had to do with his more recent viral exposure, respiratory viral exposure. And so ultimately, our body's like an onion that you just have to peel away layer after layer after layer. And so in his case, my intention was to find the imbalances in his body that were affecting him the most. So in biomagnetism, when you work with patients, clients, intention is everything, as in, our field of work of energy medicine. If you come to me with a headache and it's my intention to focus on the headache, then I will be able to find many of the issues involved with the headache. But if you come to me with, a laundry list of 10 things, I need to focus my intention on, wait a second, let me, tell me what are your top 3 things, because in order to try to deal with 10, that's way too many things. I want to focus in and have the body show me what are the most important issues going on that are throwing off your body's homeostasis and balance. So going back to this individual, I found that he had certain underlying infections such as Pseudomonas and tuberculosis. He had Epstein-Barr from lots of stress. And as I placed those magnets and was able to rebalance the pH in very specific areas of his lungs, whether it was the tops of the lungs or on his pleura of the lung and elsewhere, once the time was up and the magnets stabilized the pH in those areas, I took off the magnets and then I rescanned his lungs and everything that had to do with his respiratory system. And I found other underlying infections and disbalances with regards to his respiratory system. So I found more bronchial inflammation, as well as I found some tracheal or larynx inflammation. And so as I continued placing other magnets, he immediately felt his voice begin to clear. And just by the end of the session, he was talking different. His energy was better. He could get in a larger breath. And so he was blown away by the improvement in many of his symptoms, even though some were chronic, some were acute, but they were found in different layers of the onion that I was peeling. And so fortunately, I had plenty of time to spend with him because he was the last patient of the day, but I was able to peel away about 3 layers worth of things. And so depending on how much time you have, how much experience, are you only going to be able to peel away 1 layer and probably either start taking care of some of the older things, or can you peel away 2 or 3 layers and kind of peel away from older things to more acute things? And so our body has a funny way of showing us different things at different moments. And it kind of says, you know what, pay attention to this first. And now that you've cleared that, now pay attention to this. And so, once again, I don't really pay attention to whether it's acute or chronic. I kind of let the body's energy show me things layer by layer, and I just remove and balance and remind the individual that, I've now provided the necessary environment for your body to now begin to heal itself. So, avoid the inflammatory foods and change your mental state and get better sleep and hydrate, because our body's made up of 75% water. And so if I'm moving hydrogen protons and hydroxy ions around, I need a fluid environment. If you're dehydrated, it's as if your body's like sludge. And so everything's going to move very slowly. And the more hydrated you are, the better everything just flows.
Yeah, and I see something similar to the onion analogy, right, is so
The onion.
beautiful, right? Because it helps us to, have this other model that it's just one pathogen that's responsible for the whole complexity of symptomology that our patients come in with, right? So it's this, I've been saying this word a lot to try to explain it, like the ecosystem. We have like this, ecosystem in our body, and we know we're more microbes, right, than human cells even. And so it's just, what are some conditions or what are things that take us off, balance, and that these potentially opportunistic stealth pathogens or what have you take hold. And then, through your work and, this modality, you're able to, create more of a healthier terrain so the immune system can navigate that, and the body can, the body can relax. And it's just this idea too, right? That, we're not just trying to kill one bug and then everything is cured, right? It's more interconnected than that.
Absolutely. And ultimately, say someone that had, say, pneumonia in the wintertime, I can detect that even though they may no longer have the pathogen that created that, they still have the pH imbalance, whereby if they're re-exposed to that pathogen in the next several months, well, they're going to come down with the pneumonia because the environment is still perfect for that pathogen to survive in. So it's the perfect example is a swimming pool. And so as long as you maintain the proper pH, you add the chlorine, you add the sodium bicarb so that it remains stable, the water is going to be clear and you can swim in the swimming pool and it's going to be okay. The moment you stop adding those chemicals to maintain the pH, that's when the water is going to become murky and algae are going to grow. And, clearly you don't want to be in that water. And so we have to maintain our body's pH as well. It's absolutely fundamental that we do that through hydration and alkaline diets and, positive mental attitude as well, because that, stress and our mental state will upregulate our adrenals, and that will decrease our immune system, and make us prone to catching infections. And so if we meditate, if we do yoga, if we maintain a positive mental attitude, that goes a long way towards boosting our immune system and just elevating our metabolic state, as well as, deep breathing exercises has an alkalinizing effect, and yoga and exercise, all of those are absolutely essential. And so I do try to encourage all of that with, those patients that I see, because yes, magnets are phenomenal, but you can't expect to have ice cream, hot dogs, and hamburgers, no exercise, eat pork on the weekends, and expect for you to have stellar health. It's not going to work that way. I can tell when individuals have any of those things because it shows up as pH imbalances in the body. I can tell if you've had cheese, cold cuts, pork, raw contaminated seafood, and others.
Yeah,
it creates very specific imbalances in the body.
Yeah, patients, can't, you'll find it, right? If they forget to tell you, you're going to remind them, right?
Every time.
Yeah. The body doesn't lie, right? So
correct.
So we talked about, this relationship between, pH and, these pathogens, or these, this whole ecosystem that we're trying to balance. And then, there's a lot of other environmental factors and environmental stressors. And of course, we have some speakers talking about this increasing exposure to EMFs and how EMFs are impacting our physical bodies and our body electric. And so can you share with us how you've worked with biomagnetism to treat, EMFs? And, we see, I know, this increasing, kind of symptom picture of what we would call EMF sensitivity, or EHS syndrome, where people are highly sensitive to the EMFs that are really ubiquitous in our environment right now. So,
absolutely. So, first and foremost, in my experience, EMFs absolutely throw off our body's energy. Once again, I mentioned about how, our cells need to maintain a certain microvoltage level. And so if we're constantly being bombarded by these invisible energy frequencies that are right side our home or even within our home, then, clearly our cells are going to be affected. And so I have observed time and time again how people come in with these EMF sensitivities and chemical sensitivities and others. And fortunately, thanks to using biomagnetism, by stabilizing their pH and restoring the proper electromagnetic frequencies to those individuals, their health begins to change. And so Dr. Isaac Goyes, who created this therapy over 30 years ago, and Dr. Raymond Ilou from Spain actually did several days worth of seeing, I believe it was over 200 patients in Spain, and they videotaped that research that they did. And so I want to share with everyone some of that right now. So let me share screen. So here's Dr. Raymond Ilou taking a blood sample from this individual. And there he pokes her. Here he's looking at her blood underneath the microscope. This is a dark field microscope. And here we can observe red blood cells that are clumped together. And this is called the rouleau effect. And so this is not what you want to see in a person's blood. It doesn't matter where where the clumping is, it's bad, period. So here we see one red blood cell by itself, the rest here clumped, and so he's going to move the slide around there. He moves it, and you're seeing all of this clumping occur. This is called rouleau effect. This predisposes people to heart attacks, to strokes, to blood clots in different areas, whether to the lungs, to the legs. It makes the blood more viscous. It is not an ideal situation. And so no matter where he moves the slide around to, we constantly see this rouleau effect. And so here he's seeing cholesterol crystals. And so now I'm going to fast forward, and Dr. Goyce then proceeds to do the muscle testing using her feet and analyzing her body's energy. And he detects an imbalance, and so he starts to place magnets on her. Black on one side, red on the other, and he continues with the scan. And so there he sees the leg imbalance and places yet another pair. And so you can scan the individual for hundreds of different infections and place as many magnets as time allows. And so there, I'm just going to fast forward. He finishes. He then undergoes about 15 minutes of an interview with a journalist. And then, as they let the woman lay down and have the magnets on her body, and then Dr. Elou then proceeds to take another blood sample from her to be able to compare it to the first one. And so, whereas before we saw the red cell clumping, here we see all of the red blood cells absolutely loose. No more rouleau effect. And so here everyone's commenting that that's fantastic. And here Dr. Elou mentions that the secret to good health is good circulation, that the blood is able to move freely throughout the body. And so here, the negative electric potential has been restored to the blood. There is no longer any red blood cell clumping observed.
That's amazing.
And so as he moves the slide around, it doesn't matter where we see, the vitality in those red blood cells. And so he comments, Dr. Elou comments and says, that blood looks like the blood of an 18-year-old. Okay.
So that's awesome, right? So using biomagnetism, we can create improvement not only in the pH, but also in the microcirculation in the body. And, it's so important, right? Blood flow, as you said, is essential to delivering oxygen and nutrition and all of these wonderful things. So how, I'm just super curious, how long, when you do a treatment like that for a patient who has significant rouleau from the start, do you have any idea is how long that treatment is sustained, or does a patient need to do biomagnetism on a regular basis as they're resolving maybe the underlying conditions of why they have rouleau to begin with?
Correct. You just finished it there. That rouleau will kind of go back to itself within about 3 or 4 days, unless the patient places magnets again and we continue to get to the underlying factors that created the rouleau in the first place. Hence, oftentimes, it's a combination of infections and dysfunctions in the body. So there may be heavy metal toxicity. There may be infections either in the kidneys that are preventing them from flushing toxins appropriately. There may be inflammation in the spleen and dysfunction in the spleen that is not allowing for it to activate the immune system appropriately or recycle red blood cells. And so the spleen is a tremendous lymphatic organ, immune system organ. And so everyone is such a complex world of issues and toxins and imbalances and infections and emotions that biomagnetism allows for the therapist to muscle test and, figure out how much each one of those is playing a part in this individual's health. Mm-hmm. And so when you start to, figure out those questions and address those different issues, the individual starts to improve, quite rapidly and dramatically. And so years of, health complaints start to disappear within, weeks or months. And once again, everyone is a different world or universe, but it's the biomagnetism or the bioenergy testing that allows for you to explore and go down each one of those rabbit holes for that individual.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And of course, everyone is highly individual and unique. And, we always take that into account with, looking at what the root causes are and everyone's own trajectory. So I think that's, we see similar things as well. And Dr. Garcia, you also mentioned how biomagnetism can also help traumatic brain injuries. I know that is obviously there's a segment of patients who have gone through traumatic brain injuries, and it can be quite debilitating for, their bodies, for their brains, that they can be more prone to developing cognitive decline symptoms, cognitive impairment. And so what kind of work have you found to be helpful with biomagnetism helping TBIs?
Sure. So little did I know that when years ago, some patients would ask me, by the way, I've had 2 concussions, can anything be done about that? At the time, I said, I've never explored that before, but let me ask your body and see, how it responds and where I can possibly find some placements on your head or on your body to help you out. And so back then, because I had worked with neurofeedback, in neurofeedback, you use a system called the 1020 system that is like a map to the brain. So this is basically a map of different points on the brain that neurologists use to place electrodes. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, okay, let me pull up that map and let me muscle test the body and see how it responds. Mm-hmm. And so I did that, and it turns out that the body pointed me in the direction of exactly where it wanted the magnets. And I had to ask, does it want black or red? And then once I determined, okay, it wants a red here, then you muscle test, where does it want the opposite color? So if red went here, now where does black go? And so I had to develop a protocol to try to figure out, where for each individual and his or her concussions and traumas and whatnot, where the body wanted the pairs of magnets to go. Mm-hmm. And so it was amazing when in the second and third sessions, they would come in and say, oh my God, I'm sleeping better. I can think clearer. And, ever since that event, I was suffering from this and this, and after your session, no longer. And so a few years ago, when I was in Colombia with my family, my daughter took a nasty slip in the rain and hit the back of her head. And so at the time, we were with family. She was having a great time. She cried. She complained. And I told her, all right, let's go do biomagnetism. She's like, no, I don't want to. It hurts, but I'm okay.
Yeah.
And so, I let her, off the hook.
Yeah.
But turns out that the next day, when she woke up, felt nauseous. We had her try to eat breakfast and she threw up. And then she couldn't walk straight and she got dizzy. And so I knew immediately that the trauma that she received the night before, well, it started to create inflammation in her head and was creating that pressure to her brain that was causing all of these issues. And so when you look up symptoms of traumatic brain injury, you're going to see all of those and more. And so unfortunately, that day we had to be on a flight, within an hour and a half. And I needed at least an hour and a half to do the magnets on her. So we just, got everything together and we headed to the airport. And on the way to the airport, she continued dry heaving and she was, lethargic and not feeling good. On the airplane, the same thing. And we got to the next city and same thing on the way to the Airbnb we were staying at. And so finally, when we arrived, I laid her down on the bed and I started to apply my traumatic brain injury protocol on her. And so after about an hour and a half, when I was done with her session, I had her get up and walk around the room. And I said, how are you feeling? And she said, better, but I still feel a little lightheaded. I said, okay, that means I peeled away the first layer,
Right.
Get back on the bed, and I have to do everything all over again.
Oh.
And and so I spent another hour and a half with her doing the protocol and just balancing everything that I was finding. And once I was done, I said, okay, get up and walk around the room. And she's like, I feel fine. I said, okay, if you really feel fine, do 10 jumping jacks and spin in a circle 5 times for me. And so she did the 10 jumping jacks. She spun in the circle and she's like, I feel fine. I'm hungry. Can I go eat now? And I said, yeah, go ahead. And so that was the end of her, symptoms from the nasty fall that she took the evening before. And so we were able to avoid, neurologist visit, emergency room visit, possible CAT scan, and, everything else. Granted, yes, I am a medical doctor and, it's not something I would advise for everyone, but in that particular situation, all of her symptoms cleared up. Granted, it took me 2 sessions and about 3 hours worth of therapy, but I was blown away because her symptoms were severe.
Yeah.
And so, fast forward after that, my daughter today plays travel soccer. And so I never knew that girls soccer was so violent and headbutts and, you get pushed and you fall, you hit your head. And so I have ended up using the TBI protocol on her multiple times since. And every single time it works beautifully. And so since then, inpatients and others, when they walk in, yes, I always do a full scan from head to toe, but I also let them know, I say, by the way, I'm detecting that you had 3 traumatic brain injuries. And so they'll say, I did have 2. I don't recall 3, but I had 2. And so what happens is in a traumatic brain injury, when the impact hits you here, there's usually a ricochet effect. And so it can go here and then up, or you're hit here, there's inflammation here, but there you also get inflammation from the brain hitting the other side here. So I'll detect inflammation here and here when they only had 1 impact here. And so I usually detect 2 or 3 more, TBI pairs than what they've had because of the nature of the impact that it ricocheted within the brain. And so once you clear those, because thank goodness the brain is neuroplastic and it's like jello, it can reconnect. Those neurons can reconnect and you can regain certain functions. So these individuals have been able to improve and notice that, they get part of their lives back after tremendous, whether car accidents or gymnastics, falls, or, sports and other traumas that they had in their youth. And so people don't have to, whether it's a football player or whatever sport or accident, suffer from all of these things unnecessarily. Fortunately, using these TBI protocols, I've had tremendous success and results. And once again, even though it's only me, that's why I've chosen to teach this to others. And that's why every year I offer training seminars to try to help get the word out so that, you can go see another therapist, whether in California or Maryland or Texas or New Hampshire or, elsewhere. You need to get the word out of all of these phenomenal modalities that can help bring back balance and to these people's lives.
What an incredible story, right? And if we learn something with your own daughter, right, that is, just puts you in a powerful journey to help others. And it's such a simple tool. I mean, obviously there's a complexity of understanding how to apply.
Correct.
But when we think about it, compared to all the invasive, things that she might have been experiencing, this is just, this is a huge toolkit. And I know that you're so passionate about sharing this work and training others. And I think this is a great opportunity for you to share. If people want to learn how to learn this work or how to train with you, how does that look, Dr. Garcia?
Sure, thank you. So the best way is to visit our website at usbiomag.com, where we're constantly updating the site in terms of, when the next training seminar is going to be. And given the current situation, we're looking to do online training as of next year. And so granted, the muscle testing part absolutely requires physical presence, hands-on training. But I think we're going to, give a little bit about that online and then afterwards offer hands-on training over the weekends. And it's still evolving, but we'll see how it comes out. And, that way I can get to more people ultimately. But I also have written a book that can be found online on our website. It's a biomagnetism practitioner's guidebook that shows where and how to place the magnets on the body that people can also purchase and start to kind of practice on themselves with. And fortunately, by using the magnets in different locations, it's about restoring balance to the body. So, if you follow along, what it says in the book, that if you place magnets in this particular direction, say over the liver, it's going to promote liver detox. And so it's going to promote the liver functioning better and being able to flush your body of certain toxins and issues. And so I forget if last time I mentioned how in Colombia, one time I was with family and friends and everyone was drinking. And my brother asked, by the way, can I use magnets to avoid a hangover? And so I said, yeah, of course. He's like, well, put them on. And so it was about 2:00 in the morning. Everyone was buzzed and feeling great. And so I put the magnets like this vertically over everyone's liver like that. Nice. And so within less than 10 minutes, everyone was sober and quiet and sleepy and calm. And my brother's like, wait a second, why is my buzz gone? I'm like, because I'm avoiding your hangover. I'm draining the alcohol from your liver. I just activated your liver to flush everything. Hence, you're not going to have a hangover tomorrow. Oh my God, you're a buzz killer. You're a party pooper. I can't believe you tricked us. And so, I told everyone, I said, nobody here is going to have a hangover tomorrow, but I activated your liver to drain. And so it's amazing how quickly and, how you'll notice certain benefits or effects when you place the magnets appropriately for specific results or conditions. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. And hey, there's no placebo effect there, right? Because they didn't want that outcome for you.
Correct. Correct. And one more thing, if I could share with you. So that is the toe of one of my patients. And so if you can observe here, that part of the toe, that's a third toe, it was considered dead tissue in the x-ray. The bone had already started to decay. And here's another picture of the front part of his nail, where we see the top third right here looks discolored, and it was already dead tissue. He had already received over 10 days of IV antibiotics, and because his ankle and his foot was in such pain, the doctors, the surgeons told him, look, we have to amputate you above the knee because the infection has spread and clearly the IV antibiotics aren't working. And so fortunately, he found out about me, and I was able to schedule him in miraculously that week. And so I did my thing, placed the magnets, and told him that he needed to take home pairs of magnets and place them on his toes to increase circulation and get rid of the rouleau effect that we saw earlier. And so by placing the magnets on specific locations on his foot, on his toes, he was going to be able to increase circulation. That was going to be able to accelerate the healing process in him. And so he understood what to do. And he said, do I need to come back next week for you to do this again? I said, no, as long as you place the magnets, exactly as I'm explaining to you, you're going to be fine. And so this was 6 weeks later. And so there we can see that's his toe completely recovered. It's nice and pink.
Wow.
And so, sure, that part needed to, recover a little bit more, but in 6 weeks, you can see how it's nice and rosy. And he was walking on his foot again. And then here you see how the entire toe was recovered. It's perfectly nice and pink again.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
And, yes.
Yeah.
And hence amputation was absolutely avoided.
Oh my gosh, I'm sure he's writing you thank you notes still.
He's very grateful, yes.
Oh my gosh. Oh, what a wonderful,
no placebo effect there.
I know, not at all.
Yeah, after days of intravenous antibiotics and nothing was working, and all of a sudden he placed magnets. I placed magnets first, and then he placed magnets to continue with the increased circulation and rebalancing the pH in his foot. The body did what it needed to do, heal itself, given the right conditions.
What a powerful story to, end on and wrap up our conversation, Dr. Garcia. Is there anything else on your heart or your mind that you want to share before we end today?
No, thank you very much for, once again, the opportunity to share all of this information with everyone. And thank you for, doing what you're doing, for being the voice for everyone out there.
Thank you for saying that. No, I just love your work, and I'm just learned so much today, and I'm excited that you have your manual on your website, and then you're going to do online trainings. The silver lining, right? That's going to be ultimately more accessible to more people doing it
Correct.
online. So, we'll have all your information alongside this interview, and thank you again for your time today.
Thank you very much, Christine. It was a pleasure as always.